How did you go about tuning your signature amplifier, the KR7, and why?
Well, my main thing with tuning my amp was it has to have a humongous bottom end, but not a woofy bottom end. It's got to be really tight. A lot of amps can't go up to 9 without shit the bed, so that was one thing that I wanted, was a really tight, focused low end. And I mean, I can mush it up too with the focus knob. If I turn the focus way up, I can get a looser bottom end out of it. I usually use it around 7 for the focus, but if you turn it up around 10, you get the bottom end to bloom. That's always a tough balance with having high gain, but also having like good articulation and still having dynamics. And again, without having your speakers kind of fall apart. A lot of amps, once you really start pushing the gain up, you really start to lose sound quality, and we managed to get a lot of gain out of it. But you can still hear, every little bit of inflection in the notes, every bit of my pick attack. The great thing about working with Paul was getting to sit there and describe what I wanted and wanted more of, less of, and then seeing him fuck with it and get physically create the sound that I'm trying to hear. It was a really interesting experience.
How has your experience been using Rivera amplifiers over the years on the road? Have they been reliable?
I've never as much as lost a tube or a fuse. I've never had a buzz. I mean, my rig from top to bottom is pretty rock solid. Now, of course, I just jinxed myself.
Your recording settings for the amp versus your live settings are completely different. Why is that?
Radically different, yeah. When you're in the studio, everything is totally different. You know what I mean? When you put a couple mics up, how many different mics, how many different cabs, whatever configuration you use, it's just a whole different world. Like, you'll find that just adding a little bit of gain will cause the mic to wash out because the speaker's washing a little bit. Same thing with the bottom end. Like, I tend to roll a lot of bottom out. Doesn't sound like you need it when you're just there in a room, but the interaction between the speaker and the air and the diaphragms of different microphones, I mean, it affects them differently, and each microphone has its own sound, and depending on its placement, it has its own sound, and it does different shit to it. So you can have a monster guitar sound sitting there in your bedroom. You got a little practice amp and a Boss Metal Zone, and you got it scooped out, and you think it sounds great, but try playing with some drums and a bass, and your sound's going to disappear. You won't be able to hear yourself. I used to do that. I just thought I needed more watts. If I had more watts, more cabinets, you'd be able to hear me. It was just, it's the EQ. It's the physical thing that you're putting out there sonically. You need to have those frequencies present. That's what a big thing I was trying to focus on achieving, and I think we did, was recording as many frequencies as possible. Like, not cutting really anything, throwing as much out there, onto the tracks, because you can always remove it later. And you can tailor it later, remove a little of this, remove a little of that. But to try to add something that's not there just doesn't really work out that well.
What would you recommend the KR7 for?
That's what's kind of funny about it, is with 3 channels and the way it's voiced with the clean, the different choices you have in terms of bright switches, boosting low end on the clean, notching it on the middle and the clean, reverb settings, all sorts of shit. The gain on the clean channel, you can actually turn channel 1 up. If you turn the channel volume up, crank the gain, you actually have like a great rock lead tone, like without even an overdrive in front of it. A little verb on it. You can play Journey solos. I mean, you could be a session guy in Nashville and use that amp. And do anything you ever wanted to. You get any lead tone, the cleanest clean tones. And that's what's funny about it, is you don't need other shit.
Why do you like your 7 speakers?
They have a tightness and headroom that I just haven't ever seen. I've put a lot of different speakers. I was using G12 T75 Celestians for a few years before finding those hundreds. And after going back and forth, A being, and it's just amazing the headroom that you get. I mean, you can turn it up when I can get past 5. Whereas before, like at 4, it's really starting to wash out. I always thought it was probably the power section starting to fall flat. But it was the speakers. The frequency range that they put out and where they push, maybe they color certain things. But in the ways it's colored, it's not negative. It's just complementary to the amp. And the amp wasn't initially tuned with those speakers. We were tuned with the G12 T75s. But with a couple little tweaks that were done after the fact, and after I come across the speakers, everything is just bigger and tighter. And like I said, with the headroom, like you don't have to have the amp cranked, but you're getting no dirt out of it. You're getting to hear every note. The cones aren't falling on their face. And I've played it through a lot of different cabinets. Nothing else does those frequencies like that.